On December 18, 2023, a single photograph surfaced from Kuala Lumpur that made Pentagon analysts pause their morning briefings. Malaysian Defense Minister Mohammed Hassan stood beside a delegation that wasn't supposed to be there, not according to 40 years of geopolitical script. Within 72 hours, 3 NATO intelligence committees requested emergency sessions. The question wasn't what Malaysia had done. It was how no one saw it coming. And more unsettling, what this means for the 11 other nations now watching from the shadows, recalculating their own allegiances in real time. Before we uncover what's really happening beneath the surface of this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to discover isn't being covered by mainstream outlets, and you'll want to be notified the moment we release our follow-up investigation. Trust me, this thread goes deeper than you think. For decades, Malaysia operated within a comfortable predictability. The 5 power defense arrangements, signed in 1971 with the UK, Australia, New Zealand and Singapore, provided a security blanket that required minimal controversy. Malaysian armed forces trained with Western protocols, purchased Western equipment, and attended Western military academies. The script was written, and Kuala Lumpur followed it with the discipline of a nation that preferred economic growth over geopolitical gambling. But something fractured between 2020 and 2023. While Western media obsessed over Ukraine and Taiwan, Malaysia quietly began diversifying its defense portfolio in ways that contradicted 50 years of strategic alignment. In August 2023, Malaysian officials finalized negotiations for advanced military technology that didn't come from Lockheed Martin or BAE Systems. It came from sources that made the AUKUS alliance deeply uncomfortable. The deal included technology transfer agreements, joint production facilities on Malaysian soil, and training programs that would integrate Malaysian officers into command systems the West had spent decades trying to counter. What made this decision particularly jarring wasn't the transaction itself. Nations shift suppliers constantly, but the timing and the symbolism. Malaysia announced this partnership 3 weeks after the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, where U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had personally lobbied for deeper integration with American defense frameworks. The message was unmistakable. Kuala Lumpur was no longer interested in choosing sides based on Cold War loyalties or post-9/11 alliance structures. This was transactional sovereignty in its purest form. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's 2024 arms transfer database, Malaysia's defense imports from non-traditional suppliers increased by 340% between 2020 and 2023. A seismic shift for a nation previously 67% reliant on Western military technology. But here's what the raw numbers don't capture. This wasn't desperation or coercion. Malaysian GDP grew by 4.2% in 2023 despite global headwinds. Their foreign reserves stood at $115 billion. This was a calculated move by a nation that could afford to diversify, and that's what made Washington nervous. The real nightmare for NATO strategists isn't Malaysia alone, it's the precedent. Within the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, 6 countries are now watching this experiment with keen interest: Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Myanmar, and Cambodia. Each operates under different threat matrices, but all share one common calculation. If Malaysia can negotiate sovereign defense agreements without Western approval and not face economic retaliation, what's stopping them? The International Institute for Strategic Studies documented 15 high-level defense delegations from ASEAN nations visiting non-Western capitals between January and November 2024, triple the number from 2019. These weren't ceremonial visits. They involved technical demonstrations, financing discussions, and interoperability assessments. The architecture of regional security is being redrawn in conference rooms most Western analysts aren't monitoring. And here's the accelerant: economics. China became ASEAN's largest trading partner in 2020 and has held that position every year since. Total trade volume reached $975 billion in 2023, compared to $480 billion with the United States. When your economic interdependence flows east but your security guarantees point west, that's not stability, that's tension waiting for a catalyst. Malaysia's decision provided that catalyst, but the underlying pressure had been building for years. Consider the infrastructure investments. As of December 2024, Belt and Road Initiative projects in Malaysia totaled $34 billion, including the East Coast Rail Link and multiple port expansions that will reshape regional logistics for decades. These aren't neutral economic projects. They come with gravitational pull. Nations that accept infrastructure become nodes in networks, and networks create dependencies that eventually influence security calculations. The Council on Foreign Relations published an analysis in September 2024 noting that 12 ASEAN nations now host infrastructure projects exceeding $10 billion from non-Western sources, a threshold that historically correlates with shifting defense procurement patterns within 15 years. Malaysia just accelerated that timeline. The Philippines, despite the enhanced defense cooperation agreement with the United States, quietly signed a defense technology exchange memorandum in October 2024 that mirrors Malaysia's approach. Thailand's military modernization plan, released in November, included provisions for diversified supplier relationships that Pentagon liaisons interpreted as code for exactly what it sounds like. The domino isn't falling, it's being deliberately positioned, one careful degree at a time. What we're witnessing isn't betrayal. It's the mathematical rebalancing of sovereignty in a multipolar era. For 70 years, smaller nations accepted a devil's bargain, security guarantees in exchange for constrained autonomy. The United States and its allies provided defense umbrellas, but those umbrellas came with expectations about voting patterns at the UN, trade agreements, and which companies got infrastructure contracts. Malaysia's move represents a new calculus. What if you could get security and autonomy by playing multiple powers against each other? It's not ideology, it's leverage. The Lowy Institute's 2024 Asia Power Index shows Malaysia's diplomatic influence score increased by 11 points since 2020, the largest gain among Southeast Asian middle powers. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. By refusing to be predictably aligned, Malaysia transformed itself from a passive recipient of great power decisions into an active broker between competing interests. Every Western diplomat who now visits Kuala Lumpur knows they're not dictating terms, they're negotiating them. And that psychological shift ripples across every interaction. The most uncomfortable truth for NATO strategists is this: they have no effective response that doesn't prove Malaysia's point. Economic sanctions? Malaysia's trade diversification makes that ineffective and potentially more damaging to Western supply chains than to Kuala Lumpur. Military pressure? That would validate every accusation of neo-imperialism that undermines Western soft power across the global South. Diplomatic isolation? Malaysia chairs ASEAN in 2025, giving it a platform that amplifies rather than diminishes its voice. The strategic checkmate is almost elegant. By moving first and moving decisively, Malaysia created a fait accompli that makes confrontation costlier than accommodation. As of January 2025, 17 nations from Africa, Latin America, and Asia have sent diplomatic inquiries to Kuala Lumpur asking for briefings on their defense procurement model, proof that Malaysia isn't an outlier but a pioneer. The world order isn't collapsing. It's being renegotiated by nations that were supposed to remain spectators. And the most powerful actors in the old system are discovering that their playbook doesn't have a chapter for opponents who refuse to play by rules they never agreed to in the first place. Malaysia didn't make a reckless gamble. It made a calculated bet that the era of binary alliances is over. Whether that bet pays off will determine not just Southeast Asian security, but whether middle powers everywhere realize they have more leverage than they've been told. The question isn't whether this changes the game. It's whether you'll recognize the new rules before it's too late. If this analysis opened your eyes to the real power shifts happening beneath the headlines, drop a comment below with your prediction. Will 3 more ASEAN nations follow Malaysia's model by 2026? Or will Western pressure force a reversal? Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because next week, we're investigating which NATO member is quietly having the same conversation behind closed doors. You won't want to miss it.